All right, it looks like the stream is live now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Xbox Roundtable podcast. This is show number 285. Your place on Sunday nights to just, kick back, relax, pop a cold one, and just enjoy some Xbox talk and a little bit more from around the game industry on Sunday nights. I'm Invader, your host for tonight, as per usual, and I'm really happy to see you all here. As more and more of you start joining in, I already see a few of you in the chat already, with probably plenty more to come. For tonight, we'll discuss Starfield hitting a pretty big milestone. Do we think that this is a new title that will turn into a tentpole franchise, possibly for Xbox and Bethesda? Well, we'll get into that and a lot more stuff regarding that. As well as I'm sure you're all aware by now, Studio Volition is no more. We'll give you our take on the studio's demise and possibly touch on some more things. But first off, let me introduce everybody on the panel tonight. Lots of familiar faces. Tonight we're joined by the ever familiar face, though, Dots RTS. Dots, what's going on?
Not much, man. Not much, man. Happy to be here. Happy to see all your smiling faces that I don't actually see, but I can feel them. I can feel the energy from that. No, it's been eventful. I mean, this whole year's been eventful. I think we've been preaching that over and over and over again, that this year for gaming has been great. So I'm all hyped for it. Obviously, me and my RTS corner, we're really happy this year. This year has been giving us a lot of gems. And otherwise, outside of that, I mean, I've been playing Armored Core 6 and have been, it's good. It's really good. But then, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about stuff. Let's get it going.
All right. So you're happy to talk about Crusader planning his Garrus cosplay?
I mean, that's been in the works since high school. That's been in the works since high school.
You see, I got told about this earlier, that I'm evidently doing this. And I'm just like, whomstid've?
Yes, that was our third topic that I just put, as a very secret topic that I put into Dots's little link specifically. So it's just a little silly thing that I was doing, but Dots caught on pretty well. But whatever. I didn't actually know if you were planning to cosplay or not, Crusader, but it's all good, pal.
The Witch King Agmar would be the cosplay I'm planning to make.
All right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. But speaking of Mr. Crusader, Bud, how's the week been?
It was very busy. I was supposed to do 2 on-sites for my IT job, and then just a couple days in the office and just like doing stuff, and it turned into an almost full week of on-sites, which is kind of a lot. But somehow I managed to, between last week and this week, put 60 hours into Starfield. It's very good. I have the only faction I haven't finished yet is the Crimson Fleet. And I am on New Game Plus. But the only faction, yeah. So like we'll talk more about that later. But like, yeah, very excited for that, and then very excited for the game I'm going to be playing after that, which is Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. And that's it. Unless you have questions about what the hell that is.
I mean, if you're going to dive into it going into next week,
we can talk about it a little next week. It's just a RPG that is like completely musical based, like any Broadway musical. It's really cool. I'm really excited to try it.
Interesting. All right, gotta look that one up then. I think I've heard of it. Let's see. Moving on down the list here. Shockley, buddy, what's new and exciting?
Not much. Didn't really get a chance to get into Starfield, even though I had it downloaded. But just been watching a bunch of football. Today was the kickoff, or I guess Thursday was. But been a lot of good games today, and went to the actual game, so I didn't get a chance. I ended up getting free tickets to my hometown team, so I was like, well, I'm not going to get into Starfield today since now I got good seats, so for free. But yeah, I'll definitely try to get into it this week. Definitely been wanting to, since everybody's posting all the cool stuff you can do, and all the different factions and all that stuff looks pretty dope. So definitely want to get into it this week for sure. So, but ready to get into these topics.
All right. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. And lastly, to round out the crew, we got the general in the house, Mr. MLD. What's going on, brother?
Hey, just been a good week. Playing Starfield as much as I could. Powered through the campaign. Took me about 30 hours with minimal sidetracking and ship tinkering. There's a lot to do. I barely scratched the surface. A lot of things I intentionally just put aside because I want to know the main story. I want to know about this New Game Plus everyone's always talking about. Without spoiling it, I'd say it's worth it. And now I'm starting my second playthrough, and that's going to be where I just do everything. I enjoy the factions and all the game has to offer. So I'm excited. It's been a great week for Starfield and for Xbox.
Indeed. Reminder, everyone, tuning in to share out this episode and let everyone know that we are currently live. So definitely put that out there. Also, smash the like button and sub to the channel if you're new, because, hey, I love it when the new faces are here, and I'd love you to stick around. All right, seeing some familiar faces in the chat. Great to see you all. Yeah, sup. And, we got some Crimson Fleet love here. The quest line is amazing. Oh, thank you very much, Kenta. Okay, guys, speaking of Starfield, let's get a rolling here with some Starfield talk, and we've been doing a lot of that recently. The game is finally available to the broader masses, to the public, and it has been dominating on the news front. It's been so big that it already has become Bethesda's biggest launch ever, with 6 million players on both Xbox and PC. So the game is, I would say it's pretty popular from the sounds of things, just to, put it lightly. Now, Mr. Dots, buddy, have you been playing it at all? I mean, obviously, I know you're more the RTS, like RPG-focused guy. But, even if not, like, what do you think about the numbers being generated here?
So I have not played it yet. I do plan to at some point in the near future. I was kind of waiting for the hype to slowly die down, especially since I have other things I'm playing. I'm also not currently at home, so I don't have my nice PC for it. I'd probably be playing it on my PC through Xbox. No, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. I think that the game coming out of the gate and getting this much numbers, this much praise is a good sign. Having a solid AAA game come out the gate with this much positivity from the people who are playing it, and a crap ton of negativity from the people who can't play it or don't play it and just want to complain about it. No, I'm in awe of what I'm seeing. Crusaders keeping me in the loop. I mean, other than one way I was able to tell that this game was good was that the Thursday that it came out, I lost all contact with Crusader. He just vanished. He vanished from existence. And I didn't probably talk to him for about 10 days, like on voice chat. Like I might have, a couple Discord messages here and there, but I went over to his house to pick up some mail, and he just wasn't there. And I was like, well, I'm never going to see him again. He's either playing the game or sleeping.
And it's bad when Dots tries to pull me into the brand new Destiny raid, and I'm grumpy because he's pulled me away from something else. God. That doesn't happen.
You were, and that's the thing. You liked the raid; it was good, but it's just, it's like every so often I'm like, "Don't worry, Crusader, we'll get through this, and you can go back to Starfield." Just today, it's like we're gonna do some spoils farming in D2. It'll be in and out, like less than 30 minutes. Then you can go back to Starfield. But no, joking aside, I think me and Crusader have a lot of similar tastes, and there's a lot of tastes we don't have in similar. But I like Skyrim, and I didn't really play much. I played a little bit of Oblivion, but I really like Skyrim. I didn't like it as much as Crusader did, because I think I stopped before I even played the the DLC that came after the vampires and werewolves one. I don't know
Dragonborn.
why, but like I like those types of games. You know, I like these role playing games. I mean, for everything what I'm seeing, I really like No Man's Sky, and if this is just like a super polished No Man's Sky in terms of like the exploration, and as Crusader can attest to, the space combat, space fighters and ships and whatever, that's my jam. That's my home. That's my calling. So when I do get the game, because I will get it, I know I will get it. There will be some people will take many hours to create a character. I will take many hours to create a ship, and it will be the most abysmal, beautiful, biblically accurate starship anyone's ever seen. And I can't wait to tear it up in space with that kind of thing. So I'm loving all the hype. I'm loving all the love, and in a way, I'm actually feeling a little bit of a aggressive happiness from seeing all the people complaining because they can't play it on that one little console that they always overhype with games that they get that Xbox people don't. So
so it's okay for them to have exclusives, but when Xbox does,
Final Fantasy 16, I would love to play it, but they throw it out as this is why PlayStation's better. Xbox can't get something like this, and it's like, oh, we have Starfield, and then they start belly aching, and it's abysmal. It's fun to watch, but it's also just kind of saddening. The one-sided mentalities, and it is what it is. I'm happy to see these numbers. Main thing is I'm happy a AAA game came out and with a resounding success from the people who played it, ignoring all the hatred from people who haven't played it or can't play it or won't play it, and them belly aching. The people who are playing it are saying a lot of good things. Obviously, you guys who have played it can get more attest to it, but I'm sure I heard that it was not as buggy as other Bethesda launches, if I recall hearing that.
It's got some bugs, but it's not like
it's
of
not
course
like
it's not
Skyrim at launch.
crapshoot with that.
It's not Skyrim or Fallout 4 at launch.
Yeah, so that's awesome to hear. That's great that their day one patch is not like a super. It's polishing something that's already shiny rather than, oh, this is a piece of crap. We're going to try to, reshape it into a diamond, but it's still going to be a piece of crap kind of thing. So I'm glad to hear that out the gate is, a functioning AAA game, which it's kind of bad that we have to get to that point where we have to, be like, is this AAA game going to come out complete or not? So the fact that this one is, bringing us back into what we actually enjoy as gamers is 100%, complete games on release. If they have to do a little bit of polishing, that's better than, oh, you have to wait, 6 months for us to get our, heads out of our asses to, fix the game that you guys already paid $70 for. Ugh. So,
well, yeah, close to $100 up here. So, yeah.
But no, I'm positive. I'm happy to hear, and when I actually get to playing it, I will be all on board with it. So I'm ready. I'm happy to hear it.
All right. Good thoughts there, Dots. Now, GeneralMLD, pal, I know you've spent a lot of time with the game, and I know you wanted to put some thoughts in last week too, but you had to attend to some other things that night. But dude, please lay it on us. Obviously you can tell us what your thoughts are of the game, but and also just how the launch has been so far.
Oh yeah, sure, love to. I mean, 6 million players, like that's a pretty huge launch. And we know that there was at least 2 million pre-sales confirmed in the early access. So
Estimated, not confirmed. Estimated.
Okay, estimated. Either. Thank you. But regardless, it looks like it's a pretty healthy mix. We obviously don't know the true breakdowns, but at least we know that it's a healthy mix of Game Pass and pre-sales and all that stuff. Like, they say it's their biggest Bethesda launch ever, and I believe that. The last big mainline game, Fallout 4, They shipped a certain amount of copies, but I looked it up. Lifetime, the game only sold 13.5 million, which is pretty awesome. But it looks like Starfield is almost halfway there, so we're off to a great start. This game for me, it got better the more I played. See, I get it. This game is different. It's not like your typical Bethesda mainline game. Yes, the DNA is there, but they go about it a certain way. They do have to hold your hand just to show you all the different things the game has to offer, like using your drill, your spaceship combat, exploring your first city. Like it walks you through the different things. But once that's all out of the way and you truly have the freedom of where to go and do what you want to do, the game it sucked me in. Like every night before I went to bed, I had to get a couple hours in at least. Like I just had to. The game just it got addictive. Truly it did. And when I finally got to the end, about 30 hours, there was so much stuff I wanted to do. And I knew I was only scratching the surface, because they say the best parts of the game are the factions. And I may have joined a couple, did the introductory quest, but I knew there was so much more and I wanted to do it. But in my mind, I'm like, I want that new game plus. But that's just me. Anyone listening, I recommend that as well. But hey, you guys do you. If you want to do your main long play on the first game, that's fine too. But this definitely plays like a Bethesda game, that's for sure. But my own ship, the outpost was nice too. I tinker with that as well. I tinker with my own custom ship as well. I mean, there's actually an event, it's one of those emergent events. Like I land on a random planet, just on a whim. I end up doing some abandoned warehouse. I end up stealing a pirate ship, steal it, claim it for my own, and then I tinker with it, truly made it unique and better storage, better weapons. And that was the ship I used to the end game. The game even throws you some curveballs story-wise. It's as far as sci-fi stories go, it was pretty good. It gets you thinking as well about just the where we are in the galaxy and all that stuff. I'm honestly surprised. Usually, I played the Skyrim story, the mainline Fallout games. The mainline story isn't exactly the best draw of a mainline Bethesda game. It's more like the side content, the factions. This game, they went all out with the mainline story, and I do applaud them for that. So at least they up to where it counts over there. Now, in terms of this game, its launch and whatnot, it will go the distance. 100%. This game is a modder's paradise. I'm thinking modded ships, planets, things to do on them. People are already calling for Halo planets, Halo themed ships. It's inevitable, right? The Creation Club, whenever it launches, it's going to trickle down to consoles sooner or later, and we will get the benefits of it. This game will be played for years, especially with the DLC. Everyone who got the pre-sale upgrade, they got the first DLC, Shattered Worlds, I think. Shattered something. So that's going to be good, and I'm hoping that will continue a cycle of more DLC support. I personally, one of the factions I hope gets more fleshed out is the House Varun. Those are the guys I believe in the giant cosmic snake or whatever. They got this weird fanatical religion. You can't actually join them, I found. I hope that they can be a little more fleshed out and you can actually join them, and there's a story around them too. They seem very interesting alongside, say, the Crimson Fleet, which is more fleshed out and has its own quest line. So I like that this game is changing the status quo in the industry. I'm sure I don't have to tell everybody listening and everybody here that there is a vocal group online that are trying to sour this game, try and ruin its launch, and get people on the fence to not play this game. They failed. And they also got some bad faith reviewers that reviewed the game way lower than it should be. I mean, I get this game is subjective. Everyone has their own opinion, but some reviewers, they just had an axe to grind for some reason or another, and it was obvious. But no matter what, all that aside, they couldn't stop this game. It launched great, and people love it. I looked on Steam, its reviews are mostly positive. If you're a Bethesda fan, you know what you like. This game has it, but it's a new IP, and I feel like it will get support for a long, long time. So that's it.
I mean, I hope so. Granted, I still need to put in. I hate to say it, I've only put in like a few hours into it, which is nothing. But there's things that I'm keeping an eye on. There's some things that I do really like, and there's obviously things that new things that I'll encounter. And again, I've only been to a couple of planets, but so far I'm really liking the majority of things. There's some things that I'm like, I don't know. Like some of the interactions with the NPCs are kind of like, I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of personality personally, but obviously I'm still in, and I'll be meeting a whole lot of other characters along the way. So again, like I'll reserve my judgment for the time being, obviously. That being said, though, like MLD, what would you say like if you had to put like an out of 10 kind of a thing, like what would you rate it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Off the top of my head, my gut feeling is a 8.5 because it launched in a great state, very polished. Sure, there's some. I had some funny bugs, like people like clip through the floor or something like that. But nothing game breaking. So and that's the most important part. So you had those like haha kind of bugs, but I'm taking that into account. I do understand that the game is a bit slow at first. I get that, but this is a long game, a 100+ hour game if you really truly try to do everything. But that might turn off some gamers. So I'm taking that into account as well. Some want to get like going right away, and so then in that case this might not be for them. And there are some that would say that this game is too traditional Bethesda-like. Like they want this game to, what is it? They didn't want like say Fallout 4 in space. They wanted the NPCs to act differently. They wanted the combat to be a little more evolved. I don't know. Some people do think that, and I'm more in the camp that being traditional is actually a good thing because that's what people like about Bethesda. They know what they want. So I think there are some NPCs that just look a little low res. They could have looked graphically better, but these are minor gripes. But which is why I personally think it's right now at launch it's 8.5, but I think it'll get better as time goes on because I feel like even though it's a single player game, it's almost like it'll be treated like a live service game because we all know it's going to get patches, it'll get DLC, it'll get updates, it'll get content with mods. So like say Sea of Thieves, the game will get better as time goes on, I feel.
They did say that because of their situation with Microsoft and just how games exist nowadays, that they can stay with the game longer than they normally would.
Oh yeah, so it'll just get better, more polished. But as of right now, at launch, 8.5. Yeah.
All right, that's fair. I'm seeing some. Let's see. Carlos gives it a solid 8, which is again pretty good. It's. Yeah. I mean, again, it'll take me a little bit more time to develop a score, but yeah, I can understand those scores. Let's see. Carlos Alvarado with the 199 super chat. Thank you very much, Carlos. He says, Chris Ding, #1 physical sales in UK, outsold Final Fantasy 16. Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so it is the #1 on the box charts in the UK this month, and in general, Chris Dring believes it has outsold Final Fantasy 16 at launch. It did not outsell Final Fantasy 16 physically, right? More copies of 16 were sold physically than Starfield sold physically, but overall, it looks like the digital attach rate of Starfield is well beyond what 16's digital attach rate was. So it's likely that it has sold more. It also had the benefit of being on another platform.
Yes. Yes. Well, that does help.
I would hope I would hope it sold more.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's that would help out with the sales. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. Crusader, I'll get to you in a minute.
Yeah,
I just want to hear Shockley because again, Eric, I know you haven't gotten to the game yet, and I'm really excited to get your impressions of it once you play it. But I mean, judging from, again, like the numbers we've been seeing here, it seems like it's Starfield's developing into a pretty important IP here. Do you think it'll be another one of those like tentpole franchises for Bethesda, or especially even for Microsoft for Xbox? Because I mean, this is the first like really, really big Bethesda game under their house.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like it will be. It was surprising. I mean, maybe not so much since it's on Game Pass, so you get instant access for all the people that are already members. But generally, you would think, because I would think it would top like the amount of players, or I guess launch for things like Skyrim, because kind of like that fantasy realm is technically usually to be known like a little bit more popular than, say, like, at least from what it seems like, for like then versus like Fallout or like Space, just that whole like fantasy type deal with like Skyrim, like that Elder Scrolls brings, tends to be really has a real strong popularity. But yeah, it's awesome to see that it's their biggest launch, and that's the other thing. People are just like comparing it with, going back to kind of the old figures of like, hey, well, it's the it didn't sell, compared to like Fallout or whatever, like the actual like box sales. But obviously it's on not as many platforms. Sure, it's on billions of possible phones, but like that's not like your actual user base that's into this type of game. So you can't just like count all the mobile devices out there, because it's just not the same game. So but yeah, it's still impressive nonetheless. It is. I was looking at some of the reviews, how I think one that came in that was like a recent, I think it was from Jimquisition. I forget the name of but I think they had made a point in the review that it was like they're bringing up like other political stuff, which again, that's their own right. But it was like, it didn't seem like, I get if you have a bone to pick with like maybe the developer or publisher, but maybe just on the game on its own merits, that part should be like not in it unless it's directly really directly involved with it. But
I mean, I do find it funny, like the game does obviously have some bugs. But it's a mammoth of a game, and it's just some of, like, I could understand if it was like a really poorly made game, but I really don't think so. Spending some time with it already, and just seeing some really surprise reviews for like 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, that kind of stuff. It's like, I don't know about that. Like, I can understand like maybe a 7.5, 8, but like, some of them are kind of mind-boggling.
And yeah, and it's like a lot of them are trying to compare, like, this isn't next gen. I'm like, you understand, you can't just compare this to like Horizon Zero Dawn or like any of these other games that are kind of just like a specific, very controlled, linear, here's what you're going to do. You have no freedom. You can go around this world, but it's very limited, and we can curate that stuff. And I can literally find, like when I was playing Last of Us, you can find certain shots where you're traversing and the character face like resolution just drops and it looks like, this doesn't look as good in this area. So you can find stuff like that, but people are like trashing this, and but they'll praise like the next GTA, and I guarantee in the next GTA you're going to find, no matter which one you play, there's a ton of jank or whatever you want to call it, or just bugs that you'll laugh at, that it's kind of, it is part of its charm. Just like for some reason the Bethesda stuff kind of just sticks, but I mean Bethesda, I don't least, well, maybe they have with Fallout the 76 and that stuff, like the online stuff.
Yeah, actually, you bring up a good point. Not to interrupt, but like I had a pretty bad bug. I was like really far into GTA 5 when it first launched on the 360, And
GTA Online was absolutely fucking broken for like the
yeah,
first month. It was terrible, and they gave you whoever, if you actually played in those first like weeks or months, they gave you a bunch of like currency and whatever for going through that shit show. But yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh no, it just like I remember Rockstar's response to this one bug because you had to steal a car, and I think they had patched it eventually, the bug, but you had to like restart like the single player, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was just like pretty pissed off at that point, so I didn't play it for well a few months anyways. But it's just like you get response from developers like that and you get a game like Starfield, which again it has some jank. I understand because of the scope of the game, but it's not. So far, I haven't seen it broken like that.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the, it's weird that I see from just like a lot of the normal like PlayStation fanboys. I'll just see all they talk about the every day, every week right now is just constantly like Starfield of just like, oh, look at this right here, and then look at this one. This looks terrible, and then look at this. And I'm just like, do you guys? I mean, I know I haven't been playing games these past couple weeks just because I've had a lot going on, but it's like you have a lot of time on your hands, obviously. But it's like, are you guys playing any games right now? Like just like I was like, I can't keep up with that many tweets of just like constant. But like they won't say anything about Returnal, which I bought day one and it was broken for a huge amount of people. Like you would see it all over Twitter. A ton of the hardcore fans that were playing were like, "Hey, I'm stuck in this door. I can't. My whole run is ruined." I played it. I never got to see the cool fallen astronaut. They didn't fix that for like a month. So to get where you'd encounter the fallen astronaut, basically someone getting killed by a boss and you can kind of avenge them. I'd already beaten the game by that point by the time they fixed it. Like, so I mean that game was broken for a month, but like that kind of got swept under the rug. But I get it, it's not like Bethesda, and it didn't have like a ton of, but that was also a very smaller linear game, and it was still published, by PlayStation, so still published by a giant publisher that can, that had their foot behind it. So can't give you a pass there. Which I enjoy the game. Like that game was awesome. Like, but I can get past some of that stuff in a sense. But and especially with the Bethesda game, like Skyrim had all this jank, but it was still like 90 plus, highly rated Metacritic, one of the best games of that gen. A lot of people's, that played that game I spent endless hours in it, and I didn't even beat the game just because I was doing so many other things. And no, that's the other thing. If all these things that people were saying is true, like, oh, look at all these bugs, look at all these, this doesn't look as sure. Some parts of Skyrim didn't look as good as Gears of War or something like that, or Last of Us, but those games don't give you the same experience, nowhere even close to it. So that's what people need to think about when it's like, you can't just compare it 1-to-1. Oh, it doesn't look next gen. Cool. What other game is giving me that same experience? That's not like an old game. I don't know. It's not No Man's Sky. So what is on the PlayStation side or anywhere else? Is Baldur's Gate 3 giving the same experience? No, they're completely different games. Sure, they're RPGs in a sense, but they're like completely different. It's like comparing this to Final Fantasy. These are not this. They're both RPGs, but they're completely different.
Well, I think the PlayStation crowd is upset that, I mean, obviously they're seeing the success of the title Starfield, and again, there was talk even before the Microsoft buyout of ZeniMax and Bethesda that again, PlayStation were going heavy into Starfield and talking about possibly buying up timed exclusivity for it. So, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but Microsoft kind of swooped in there. So
I love how they were like, oh, it looks like Jim Ryan dodged a bullet and got the, paid for the right ones. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you guys didn't really even talk about Ghostwire Tokyo. Didn't talk that up at all as
Oh,
far in that
yeah.
as far as having that exclusivity. And they pretty much most of that fan base trashed Deathloop, saying, "Hey, this shouldn't have got 10 out of 10s. This is like a average. Look at this bad AI." You know, they trashed the crap out of that. So I would have taken if I was, you know, on PlayStation only and didn't buy any other consoles. I would have definitely taken Starfield over those two. So I haven't played the other two, but just from the look of it, I'm like, I'll take Starfield, this giant new RPG from Todd Howard. You know,
Yeah.
Skyrim in space, cool. That's what it is. But that's awesome. So, you know, give me GTA in, you know, space. Yeah, that sounds cool too. Rockstar makes a whole like not like GTA, but like you could just make a world where it's like, sure, give me that same freedom and, you know, make a giant world in a huge new setting that we haven't really had. Because you really haven't had a space game to this level. We've had like, sure, we had the Fallout kind of in space, which was like Outer Worlds in the sense. So it kind of was a mix of that, but you know, probably not to this degree. So yeah, I think it's definitely gonna. Well, hopefully they'll show us some subscriber numbers. Maybe we'll. I don't know if they will, since they've kind of morphed everything, so you can't really tell.
They'll tout them if they're big enough, probably.
Yeah, I wonder because of the whole Game Pass core, how they're going to do that. Because it's like, can you really tell us the numbers on the PlayStation side? Because you only had 3 million, I think, in the what was it? What was the other PS Now or whatever it was? So, but then when they morphed them all together, now you kind of just threw them into the 45 million or 47 million of PlayStation Plus and PS Now together. You can't really tell that whole part of, you know, PS Now, how much of that grew, or did it really grow? Or is that just, you know, people being forced to pay out for online play? So it's kind of hard to tell. I don't know if they'll just, you know, tell us, hey, Game Pass Ultimate subscribers or Game Pass. I don't know how they're gonna. They probably won't tell us because they're probably, you know, they've been pulling back those numbers.
You're right, but I would say though, again, if the numbers are big enough, they will tout them. I wouldn't be surprised. But
Yeah.
time will tell. Time will tell, right? So, but yeah, no, interesting thoughts there, Eric. And yeah, no, I definitely hear you on your points. Now, Crusader, I know you've been waiting patiently to get in because I know you've spent a lot of time with the game over the past week, and even
I see it in my sleep.
yeah, even though, you know, with your busy schedule is what you were saying. And again, lay it on us, brother. Like, again, you know, the game had this big launch. And now that you've, I mean, you beat the game, right? If I'm correct.
Yes. Yeah. I beat the main story. I've beaten 3 of the 4 faction quest lines.
All right. Yeah, that's good. So, yeah, you know, tell us, you know, what'd you think of it? And yeah, I mean, pretty impressive stuff so far, numbers wise, from what I can see.
So, I mean, you know, 6 million players in the first couple days. Well, I was the first week or so of the game, 6 million people had played. 2 million concurrent across all platforms. Or was it 2 million or was it 1 million? It's 1 million, right?
1 million, I
1
believe.
million concurrent across all platforms is a wild metric. I actually wonder what you'd expect either Saturday or Sunday to be the peak concurrent numbers. It's generally the trend. Very few games break that trend. Cyberpunk did it when its anime dropped, and Baldur's Gate kind of did it because it kind of kept growing in popularity. We may see that with Starfield. We saw I think it was 340,000 was the highest I think I saw Steam hit, which is a pretty wild metric that makes it like either the 3rd or the 4th highest game of the year, only behind Hogwarts and Baldur's Gate. Hogwarts was only on Steam on the PC store, whereas you can get Starfield on the Xbox store, where you know, you get the cross buy if you get it on Xbox and PC. You also get Game Pass through there. So that's really impressive metrics on Steam, and it was really impressive that I think it hit 240,000 with the $100 edition of the game. We talked about that last week. That's an wild metric, absolutely wild metric.
Mhm.
And to talk a little bit more about Carlos Alvarado's super chat, the Chris Dring actually thinks it may be the largest launch of the year with Game Pass factored in.
Damn.
Because the sales themselves are absolutely wild from what I've heard. Beyond what was expected for both Xbox to do physically, because Xbox is not very physically driven in terms of like purchases. Xbox is not quite PC, where PC is almost entirely digital. The only physical sales PC really sees for games are collector's editions, where even if they have a digital code, that is considered a physical purchase. Just some industry insight. If there is a physical product that is sold, it is considered a physical purchase.
Mhm.
So PC is almost entirely digital. Xbox is also almost entirely digital, but not quite to the same extent as PC. PlayStation is about 60-40 from the last time I've looked at the metrics of it. 60% digital, 40% physical. And then Nintendo is mostly physical still. So to see Xbox charting at number 1 with any game in the physical chart, in a region where they don't sell as well as the other consoles, is actually wild. It really is a wild metric,
Mhm.
simply because the physical sales just aren't there normally, because users don't buy the physical. And so when you factor in what is likely an 80% increase in digital sales, that would be expected to kind of go along the trend, and then all of that Game Pass sales, and then all of the upgraded editions that were purchased, whether it's $30 or $100, you're looking at some wild metrics for a game. And I've been saying for a long time on this show that Microsoft needed a non-Halo, non-Gears, non-Forza major title to start attracting new users, because Halo, Forza, and Gears, in my opinion, have attracted as many people as they're going to get into the ecosystem. You're not going to get many. You're going to hold a lot of your players who like those things, but you're not going to generate a ton of new hype with those
Right.
things, right?
Mhm.
You're really not, because there have been 6 mainline Halos plus 2 spin-offs plus a bunch of super spin-offs like Halo Wars and stuff like that, right? And the spin-offs would be ODS. The not super spin-offs would be ODST and Reach. You've had 5 mainline Gears of Wars plus Judgment plus Hive Busters was almost its own game, and then what was it? What's the Gears Tactics? And
Mhm.
then Forza, you've had 5 Horizons, and this will be the 7th Motorsport, or is it the 8th Motorsport? General, General, you
8th.
be the
It's the
guy there.
8th, I believe.
The
It's
8th?
the 8th,
Okay.
yeah.
You're not really attracting a ton of new people with that kind of content. It's very good content, and it's content that the people in the Xbox ecosystem already want, and it's content that people who come in with something new like Starfield may also want, but they don't really know it, and the content there isn't really attracting them to start. Starfield really is something different for Xbox, and I've been saying it for years that they needed this. Didn't have to be Starfield. It could have been Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2 is going to be another great example of it, and I think Avowed and Outer Worlds 2, and there's a lot of Indiana Jones. There's a lot of other games that can do it as well. But Starfield is really the first one to actually land, right? Redfall, I don't think ever was going to do it, even if it was good. It's just not. I don't think Arcane's games are quite big enough to really do it. I don't think Deathloop would have done it either. I don't think Ghostwire Tokyo would have done it either.
Right.
They're just not big enough, right? And a new IP from anyone really is a risky thing to try and do this with. But with Bethesda, you know what you're getting with a Bethesda RPG generally, right? You know kind of the core principles of how the game is going to play. The very core kind of like soul of a Bethesda game is very similar from whether you're playing the Elder Scrolls or Fallout or now Starfield, right?
Mhm.
So you know what you're expecting, but this is a brand new IP, and I don't think it'll be I don't think the concept of tentpole IPs really exist anymore. And the reason I'm going to say that is they take like what How long do games take to make now? 4 to 6 years?
Well,
Right?
this one took what, like 9?
Yeah, it took forever and a day to make this one, though I believe it was only in full development, in full develop. It started full development in 2014, but it didn't really have its full team until I believe it was 2018 or 19.
Right.
Because a lot of the team, that now finished it, was working on 76. Arcane, or not Arcane Austin, the Bethesda Game Studios Austin was the main developer of 76, but a lot of those people did come in to work on this game, and there was a lot of assist from the Bethesda office in Rockville, Maryland, the main office that was helping with 76. So the bulk of the development probably did start after 76's development finished, at least the prime development finished. So you're looking at 4 to 6 year games. I don't see how a franchise that only comes out every 4 to 6 years can really be a quote tentpole, because if it's a tentpole, you'd expect more frequent launches, more consistency. So I don't see the concept of a tentpole really existing anymore outside of live service, right? Halo Infinite can still be considered a tentpole franchise because it just is. You know what I mean? The game will keep existing.
I suppose how I would rephrase that is,
Key
is
franchise?
this something
franchise?
that would be like rotated into like the regular kind of, you got like the Fallouts, Elder Scrolls,
Yes.
like, is this something that like Starfield 2 like 10 years from now?
I fully expect Starfield to be a regular, and I'm using regular very liberally here,
Right.
a regular delivery from Bethesda Game Studios now. That being said, I expect that Bethesda will work on ways to streamline their development pipeline, probably like probably doing like more multi-threaded development, expansion of like multi-threaded teams where like maybe while the games take 4 to 5 years to make, they have more teams kind of running simultaneously so that games come out every 2 to 3 years in the future. And Todd has said in interviews he knows that it's a problem that their games, that players are waiting for the franchises they love so long, and they're working on ways to address that. So I wouldn't be shocked. I also wouldn't be shocked to hear that perhaps a new studio, and it might even be a studio under Bethesda Game Studios, but a new studio is opened to handle something like Fallout in the interim. But that's conjecture until we actually hear about plans. But yeah, no, Starfield is definitely going to be something that that is a major franchise. You don't. There's no way it couldn't be with a game with 6 million people playing it in its opening week and a half, right? No way they wouldn't focus on it. And having finished the main story, there's definitely more stories to be told. A lot more stories that can be told in this universe. The world building is there. I still prefer, in my pecking order of Bethesda games, the Elder Scrolls are still on top. This would be in front of Fallout for me. I'm not a big Fallout fan. I can't get into it's the post-apocalyptic world. I can't get into the nuclear holocaust kind of settings. Fallout's probably the one I like the most because of its kind of it's like 50s charm. But even that can sometimes get on my nerves, the comedy. It's just not for me. It's the same reason why like sometimes I'm not a big fan of the Outer Worlds, because it's just the comedy kind of takes me out of it.
Yeah, it's like a comedic space western kind of a thing.
Yeah, and Starfield doesn't have that problem for me, which is why I really, really like it. There's some comedic moments, and there are some great one-liners. Like Dots and I have a good friend who's an actuary, and one of the lines, it's kind of like the arrow and the knee line in Skyrim, and it's, "I used to be an actuary, now look at me," is what some of the guards will say. And I actually called him on the phone, and I'm like, "You have to go buy this game." And he went and bought the game right after I told him the line. But I think that this is going to start a new, and I've been saying this for years now, that Starfield is going to start a new era for Xbox, because they're truly shifting into the era that is representative of all of the purchases and studio openings and expansions and promises that they made. And I told everyone that I was being hypercritical of them for taking so long to get here. But I would praise them when they're here.
Right.
And they're
right.
here. They are here. And it is really exciting. Now, are we going to stay on this course? I think so, because there's like 1.5 billion games announced that, have to come out at some point. And that so many of them we've been waiting so long for that they almost certainly have to start releasing. And next year looks like we're going to get that cadence. And they are very confident. They have been speaking very confidently, and they haven't really shut up since June, right? And normally we get an era of kind of radio silence, but they went into Gamescom and they had all kinds of new information for us. They were showing off Towerborn being playable, and they told us all this new information about Xbox. And they were being real confident in that. And then Phil is all confident about going to Tokyo Game Show at the end of the month, that they're going to be there and they're going to have new stuff. They're going to be talking about Japanese partnerships. The confidence hasn't died. And normally when we go into the eras of like the recessionary periods with Xbox, they go silent. And they're not going silent. In fact, they're talking about how they need more shows. They need more shows to talk about stuff. And Starfield is the beginning of this. And it is a great beginning to it. It's not a perfect game. On my list, it's probably in a top 5, but like I only rate my games based on how much serotonin they give my brain, right? I call it my serotonin scale. In fact, I'm going to be moving away from using numerics for it as much as I can, because I don't like numerical grading, because it makes when you hear a game gets a 70 out of 100 as a review score, there could be a great scale behind that where that actually could mean that it's good, because their rubric is very different than other rubrics. But when you hear 70 out of 100, you think C. You think it's oh my God, I got a C on this paper. Jesus, I'm not getting into college, right? And so I want to get away from using numerics. So I don't really want to rate it out of 100. On my serotonin scale, it's a 5 out of 5, right? It's perfect on the serotonin scale. There's some bugs and some annoyances and stuff like that, but none of that has detracted from me just having a great vibe in time. Like normally when I run into bugs into games and I have to roll back a save an hour, like I did earlier today, I had a bug where I had to roll back a save an hour, right? Normally I'd be really annoyed and I would just get up and walk away. I was like, oh well, I'll just play through those missions again, and just went and played through them again. Like wasn't even annoyed. And that's how you know that you have a wonderful experience on your hands, right?
I guess, I would still be kind of pissed, to be honest.
I was annoyed.
I do get it. I was
annoyed.
Yes.
But also, when I went back through, and I've done this a few times where I've made a mistake and I've actually loaded back. I think 4 or 5 times now I've loaded back an hour or 2 or more to fix my mistakes in the game, because I save scum. I don't commit to my choices if I see that they have outcomes I don't like. And not once in Starfield have I been annoyed, because every time I go back, and this is something I'm always sitting in the back of my head, is every time I have found something I have missed. Every time. And it's been something really awesome that I've missed, whether it be like a hidden room that has a ton of loot in it, or like an extra thing that gives me more dialogue options, like that like I skipped an optional thing that I didn't know was like even there, and then I got more dialogue options and some great stuff happens. I've only run into one actual game breaking bug, and it's tied to New Game Plus. In New Game Plus, you're given the option to skip the main storyline if you don't want to do it again. It's a nice feature of the New Game Plus. And in Bethesda games, oftentimes the main storylines, there's in the coding, there's stages to the things, and when you hit a certain stage, it can trigger other quests to begin or events in the game world to happen. And the vast majority of them auto-triggered perfectly fine, though there is one where I can't get into a building that should be opened, but it's permanently locked. I put up a thing on the subreddit about it.
Okay.
But and it's only tied to like a really like you have to be romancing a specific character, and you have to be romancing that character in New Game Plus, in a New Game Plus where you elected to skip the main storyline. So as far as bugs go, it's kind of like out there as far as like if you'd run into it, and when you'd run into it. So this is the only like game breaking bug I've run into, and the fact that it took me 60 hours in New Game Plus, because it happened today. So I guess 55 hours into New Game Plus for this to happen is kind of incredible for a Bethesda game. Like really incredible for a Bethesda game. As someone who has put like 2,000 hours into Skyrim, let me tell you, there's a lot of freaking bugs and a lot of quest lines in Skyrim that you may or may not know exist. Blood on the Ice is probably the most notorious one, where there's like 800 ways to soft lock or hard lock that quest line. And the fact that, and this actually goes to show some of the changes on the back end of the creation engine and how they handle scripts and quest triggering, is just that like quests don't seem to fail to hit triggers like at all if they are properly set, which is something that in the first creation engine, as someone who has modded the living bejesus out of it and knows a lot of the back end and how stuff works, even if stuff is set up in code right in the original creation engine, a lot of the reason why things would break would be your save file size, or some of your cached size, like how many dungeons you've been to recently. That all that kind of stuff could break stuff, but a lot of that seems to just not happen in Starfield with the creation engine 2, which is awesome. It's absolutely awesome. As someone who has spent hours debugging Skyrim to try and figure out why I managed to break something that didn't seem like I've ever been able to break it before, I haven't been able to break anything in Starfield in the same kind of ways, which is awesome. Absolutely awesome.
I guess I've never seen a developer or publisher get so much of it. I don't want to say a pass, but it's like that's the charm of their games, right? So
Yeah.
a few bugs. It's just interesting when I see them like
well,
comparing to other games.
A lot of Bethesda bugs, game breaking ones are game breaking ones. Those are annoying no matter what, no matter what developer they are, right? Like when you get locked out of a quest line, that gets real freaking annoying real fast. You know what I mean? Bethesda has a lot of weird bugs. Like one of my favorites is in Oblivion. Paintbrushes don't have gravity physics in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. If you throw a paintbrush out of your inventory, it will stay exactly in the air where you threw it out, as opposed to falling to the ground. And you could use them as ladders to climb, right? And that's kind of why Bethesda has this weird charm with some of its bugs, because some of its bugs are like almost like features. Like they're definitely not intended, and some of them they fix. Another one was in Fallout 4. If you had a bucket object in the world, there weren't items you could put in your inventory, like waste baskets or buckets or things like that. But they were things that you could pick up and manipulate by holding the A button. And if you were holding the A button to manipulate it, but also used pressed Y and jumped into the bucket, it would cause physics to get real weird if you were up against a wall. And you could actually use it as an elevator and kind of just like float up into the sky. And there's a reason why people love like a lot, like have the charm with the Bethesda bugs, because some of the bugs are just like either useful or hilarious or funny. A lot of the physics ones are gone because they got rid of Havoc physics, a very outdated physics engine plugin that they used for forever. But there's still a lot of really hilariously charming ones even in the Starfield that aren't problematic.
Okay.
But like a great one is that like you could be focused in on your camera talking to someone, but stuff is still happening in the world, and weird, like sometimes like companions can just like walk into the shot and you just kind of see their head in the background, or they're walking around. And as soon as I was streaming, and as soon as that happened and my one friend was watching, he goes, "Yep, this is a Bethesda game and I love it." So I definitely think that this is an incredible thing for Microsoft, that like this is identified with the Xbox, right?
Mhm.
I think you're going to see in the coming weeks huge sales, huge amounts of sales of consoles, right? I don't think it's gonna. I think it'll close the gap a little bit. I don't think you're gonna suddenly overnight close the multi-million gap in between the consoles. But this is going to start the process of Microsoft really growing the Xbox console base and the Xbox store, and just kind of getting the brand into the direction it should have been in after the 360. Getting it back on track after the 360. It took the entire Xbox One generation, some of this generation, to do it. But I feel like we are moving in that direction. It finally feels... Doesn't even feel like that. It almost... It's more than feels like that. Like, we're seeing it, finally.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Seeing is believing.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
And we are seeing now. So therefore, I'm willing to believe. And it's a very good feeling. I don't know how to be grumpy.
No, I think we're all tired of going on to certain topics with certain feelings, and no, I know what you mean. It's like everything is finally starting to come into fruition, right? More content complete games, and games that should be on the scale of what you would expect from a publisher like Microsoft, right? So no, this is good. This is very good. I'm glad to see them get their big new game out there. So I'm very happy. Very, very happy. Guys, any more comments on this before we move on? Yes, no? I know I'm seeing a lot of activity here in the chat. Great to see you all. Definitely, some good conversations going on there. Let's see. Nod Buggy. What does Nod Buggy say? Nod Buggy says, bury me with physical media. Hey, man, I agree. That's why I put in the chat, bury you with some mischief makers there. I know how much you like that. Let's see here. Guys, if you haven't done so already, share out this video. We'd love to get some more people here enjoying this awesome chat. And hey, give it a good thumbing, like it. That helps us out with the algorithm. And sub to the channel if you're new. I love the new faces always. All right, guys, on to some other things. And one topic that we kind of briefly touched on last week, but I kind of wanted to touch on it in a little bit more detail. And last week, it was announced that Volition Studios would be shut down by Embracer Group, following the disappointing sales of the latest Saints Row title, the reboot, if you will. And I got to admit, I'm kind of bummed by this. I'm a Saints Row fan. I've always enjoyed the games. They're kind of silly, but at the same time, I thought they had a lot of heart into them and a lot of character. It's always a fun time overall. Maybe not the last couple, but it was definitely pretty solid. But yeah, it does kind of suck to see this. Now, GeneralMLD, I think you've had a history with Saints Row, if I'm not mistaken. Did you ever play any Volition titles?
Actually, yeah. I beat all the Saints Row games. I played them in a weird order too. Actually, some people might think this is really weird, but I went from 4, 3, 1, and 2. It's weird, but I liked them all.
All right.
Yeah, my first game was Saints Row 4, the wackiest one, right?
Yeah.
And then I played the games where they get progressively less crazy, whereas most people played the games where they got more crazy. But hey, that's hilarious how that happened. I even played the DLC Gat Out of Hell from Saints Row 4. That was also pretty fun too. So that said, got my credentials out of the way here. Saints Row 3, that's my favorite. That struck the best balance between grounded and wacky, because it wasn't Matrix level Saints Row 4, that's for sure. So the new game. Okay, where to start? The game, most people will say the obvious things, like the safe answer, that the game lacked polish, and the world seemed dated by open world standards. Say the gunplay, the character models, the missions. Some people say that Grand Theft Auto 5 did that better in 2013, and they're right. But I'm going to be honest here. That's not the real reason. Not at all. Now, this is my opinion, but I feel like the reasons go deeper that to explain why this game bombed and the studio had to be shut down. Now, for one thing, it's the characters. It's how they present the story, the dialogue. It's all little things that really snowball together. Now, for starters, these aren't street gang members, right? These are Zoomers living together in an apartment. They're in student debt and they're trying to pay it off. So off the bat, the game it just misses the focus of what the Saints Row spirit was, right? Some people call this game quote unquote woke. I personally call it just cringe. And the reason why I say that is because the dialogue is just peppered with just like eye-rolling things like capitalism, this and that, it's bad. Like talk about cars and their carbon footprint. And generally just dialogue that tries to relate to just maybe young activists. Like me, an adult who grew up with Saints Row games, I can't relate to this. I just can't. They're trying to chase the new, younger audience, and doing so, they turn away the ones that grew up with this game and stayed faithful throughout the years. So they failed to really appeal to both sides, and it feels like it's like an old guy trying to like blend in with a bunch of teenagers. They're trying to relate to them, but the teenagers, they see right through them. They see right through the act. It's just pandering. It's not genuine. Like for example here, this is an example. The original Saints Row games, nothing was off limits. They robbed and wronged random people. Doesn't matter who you were, whether you were good or bad. Like they ripped you off, and it was funny. Like it was just outrageous. In this reboot, they only wronged businesses that deserve to be robbed, like say a payday loan store. It's stuff like that. It's stuff that it's safe. It's neutered. Like it's stuff that wouldn't cause any outrage. There's no controversy here. Whereas the original games, like they were all over the place. Like it didn't matter where they punched up or they punched down. It was just a wacky game that it just meant to be had fun for all people. It doesn't matter what your political leans were. There was something to be fun had. Whereas this game, it's just safe. It doesn't feel right. So that's the best way I can explain why the reboot is just so different and disconnected from the original IP and the spirit that it had and the fans that grew with it. So that's why the game bombed, in my opinion, and that's why I'd rather replay the remaster of the third game, because I played the original on 360, and I always see the Saints Row the third remastered on sale, and to be honest, I'm more tempted to buy that and replay that than play the reboot, regardless how much it's slashed or how much it's on sale. I just don't want to support that kind of game. And I feel like a lot of people agree with me. And that's because that's where we ended up with this game in studio. I don't like that people lost their jobs over it, but I'm just saying there is a natural consequence to when a developer doesn't, they lose sight of the point. They lose sight of the goal, and they don't cater to what the fans want. If you don't cater to the core fans, it's a big risk, because you want to go for a newer, younger generation. It's hit or miss, and you need the core fans to support you first and foremost. That's what I truly believe in. And yeah, it's a shame, but it was inevitable. So that's my take.
I mean, I am with you. Like Saints Row the third was actually like, I thought it was a really awesome game. I mean, it was over the top. I mean, especially when you had like the dildo bats, at times. Like that was, I mean, there was a lot of stuff, but I'm like, okay, I thought like that was going to be like the most over the top moment. I remember like game outlets freaking out about that. Because a lot of people go, embarrassed, seeing that on their screen, to try explaining that to people in the room. That being said, I mean, Saints Row 4, I mean, it was wild, absolutely wild. I was wondering what the hell they were doing with it at that point, but at the same time, I looked at it like, okay, this isn't really like what Saints Row should be, but at the same time, I had fun with the open world. I thought it was crazy, but like to me, it was like I don't know. I kind of like compared it to Crackdown in a lot of ways, and like a superhero Saints Row game. I was like, okay, all right. I mean, it doesn't really go with the Saints, but at the same time, it was fun. I kind of liked it. It was, but I could tell even then that there was like that they were kind of at a crossroads with it.
Right.
Did you ever play Agents of Mayhem by chance?
No, I mean, I heard the game bombed, and I see it ridiculously at low prices. But wasn't it like a multiplayer game?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, no, never got around to it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not multiplayer games. If I know the game is like not doing well, I usually don't pick it up because like I know I'll barely find a match as it is. So I mean, it is what it is. But I heard they were the same developers in it though. I only ever play the Saints Row games with Volition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree in the chat. Like the dubstep gun was pretty awesome, but even then, it was just kind of like, I don't know. The game, the game did feel kind of long in the tooth for me personally, even though I did enjoy a lot of aspects of it. But even I don't know, like games like Red Faction, for example, right? Red Faction came out of the same developer, before, and that was pretty good. I like the destruction physics in that.
Yeah, I never got into the Red Faction IP. I might give that a try. Actually, like of all the games released, well, what are your maybe like top? What's your top Red Faction game?
Well, I haven't played them all. I did play Guerrilla, and I thought that was a lot of fun. Armageddon, I played a little bit, and it didn't really jive with me at the time, so I didn't really continue with it. But Guerrilla, I borrowed off of a friend, and I thought it was pretty good.
How would you describe the gameplay as a first-person shooter? Or is it first person?
No, it's third.
Okay.
I mean, it's open. It allows you to do, a lot of crazy shit. Like again, like a lot of crazy shit in comparison to like a Saints Row game as well. But like again, you can like tear apart buildings and like do all kinds of crazy shit. So yeah, it was I would recommend it personally.
Okay, I might give that IP a try.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the destruction physics for its time. I think it came out in, I want to say like 2007, 2008, something like that. But a pretty solid game overall. I would definitely like. I think the one thing I'll remember from Armageddon was what was it? They had like a special gun that was a unicorn. I think it was called Mr. Toots or something.
Sure.
Yeah, it shot like rainbows out of its butt. I know, pretty ridiculous. But I don't know. The game, I guess, did have a bit of charm to it. But again, like they didn't just make these games. Volition had like quite a few other games under its belt. Like maybe some that not a lot of other people may remember, like Summoner, Descent, that kind of thing. But definitely Red Faction, and of course Saints Row. So I am surprised. To see the studio close, but at the same, even Embracer themselves did a restructuring too. So, I mean, yes, Saints Row did not do well as well, and Agents of Mayhem, but at the same time, there was just a general restructuring just going on behind the scenes at Embracer as well. So, which it sucks. These parent companies have been they eat a lot of. There's a lot of money going on behind the scenes, if you will. Dots, buddy. I mean, I'm not sure what your take is going to be on this. I don't know. Do you have any love for the developer Volition at all? Play any of their games?
Yeah. Saints Row the 4th is the only one I've played, but I watched a lot of 2 and 3, and I kind of in the background kept tabs on the games they're putting out. But when the new game came out, I watched a lot of reviews. I watched a lot of people playing it, and people were, suffering trying to say something good about the game. It really did not look like it really had much redeeming qualities at all. What General was saying was what I was hearing a lot. This cringe like Zoomer push where they could have done something where it's like, hey, this is the hip new generation of Saints, but there was still the lack of that the fact that they're a dangerous organization and there's death, murder, mayhem, explosions, and craziness on this along with it, versus either boring stuff, bad jokes. I mean, I got a lot of feeling. A lot of people were making similar. It was the writing. The writing definitely had a massive impact on it, and I know people are saying that's kind of the similar feel they're getting with like newer age Borderlands games. The writing is starting to get a little bit more on the lazy or the abysmal side, depending on how severe you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me that a lot of people will point the finger to this new game that they made and say this is the reason that their studio got shut down. But I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of studios that they put out a bad game like this and they didn't shut down. But then you have the studio that made Gollum and they shut down after putting out Gollum. So
yeah.
it's not like, companies should, get a second chance, but it's also not saying that they shouldn't. I don't know. It's an interesting situation, but it also at the same time, it gives me a feeling of, is there some sort of plan that went into this? Like, are these companies putting a little bit of money into a bad game and then so the parent company can shut them down to save money? Is there like, I don't want to go full conspiracy theorist because that's not really who I am, but like, it feels like these games are coming out lazy and poorly written and poorly done, and they're getting the bad reviews that the game deserves, but then this is an easy, hey, they put out a bad game, we lost money on this, pull the plug. But when I look at the games, I'm like, how much money did you actually lose? Did you actually like take a hit on your company, or was it just a couple negative dollars that are offset by a lot of positives on the other ends, and you're just trying to cut costs? I mean, I've heard in these last year, maybe last 2 years, there's been so many company layoffs in the gaming industry. It's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know what recent big ones there were. I know Blizzard had one not too long ago. There was the company that makes Age of Empires had a bunch of layoffs too.
There's been a few. Yeah.
It's interesting that in this post-COVID economy where gaming still feels like it's at an all-time high, but we're getting all these cutoffs. We're still getting lazy games put out. They're getting the bad reviews that they deserve. Then small studios are getting shut down. Because I mean, like when the Gollum studio got shut down, I looked at their Wikipedia. They didn't have any games that were like, this was my childhood. Unfortunately, Volition, that's going to be a lot of people. They're going to be like, Saints Row was a piece of my history. And they got shut down because they put out one really bad game. And I like Saints Row 4, but I also kind of spoiled the fact that that was my only game. I'm sure if I played 3, then 4, I would have probably been a little bit more, reserved about it. But regardless, like, I know for a fact that, all the time, Crusader will mention to me about the scene from Saints Row the Third where they're playing holding out for a hero on like a truck with rocket launchers.
Oh yeah,
I was playing it with my cousin and I was in a purple minivan holding out for heroes, going on firing rockets out the back.
Right, it's like that, and that's a deep memory you'll probably never forget. But it just sucks that that kind of quality that kind of a quality of a game is just going down the hill because these companies are putting out mediocrity or even worse than mediocrity. But it's just weird because then we're also in the same frame where we're still getting good games. Like, good games are still coming out. We're getting, our Starfield. We're getting God of War Ragnarok. We got, I'm playing Armored Core 6 nonstop. But then on the other hand, we're getting, toned downer, lazy games. Gollum was atrocious. Saints Row was bad. Everyone's talking about how all the new Pokemon games are super lazy, and in many ways they are. But they had a good hit with Arceus, but then when Scarlet and Violet came down, the world looks barren. They still can't put all the Pokemon into one single game, and now there's 2 DLCs coming out that are just going to slowly add more into it. So, but I don't know. It's frustrating to see more than anything because it's less of, I'm not really hurt that Volition got shut down. I'm hurt for the people who work there. I'm always hurt for the layoffs, people losing a job because someone up top says, pull the plug on them when, they personally probably didn't do anything wrong. The one guy who's in charge of designing the guns probably, did his job pretty well, but he's still getting laid off anyway because, the rest of the game just, you can have a really shiny screw, but if, the hole it's supposed to go into isn't threaded properly, then the screw's going to fall out. That's how every game is. So it's sad, but we're in a really interesting change, or at least an interesting area of, in the gaming world, because, gaming is massive. Gaming has nonstop been growing over the last decade. COVID has added to the gaming numbers in terms of games coming. Well, how games are made. A lot of developers working from home now. A lot more people playing games because sitting around and, staying at home, or they have at-home jobs like Crusader, who is now allowed to work at home. And then as soon as he's done, instead of taking 30 minutes to drive home, he takes 5 seconds to walk to his couch, sit down, and boom, Starfield's up on his on
You
his
act
TV
like
screen.
I don't work at the same couch.
That's beside the point. I don't see you when you work. You don't let me come over. Everything's changing for better and for worse. We're seeing the good, but this is the bad. And it's a shame, and I don't know. Obviously, I'm not deep enough into the gaming industry to know all the details of why this is happening, or what are the numbers, or what choices did they make to lead to this point. But the end of the day is, Volition's gone. They left a good lineup of old games that, people will play and, remember their good old days. And then they won't touch the new game at all. And we'll pour one out into the lake for them and just keep on keeping on.
There's one thing I want to add, though, in terms of Volition here. I just remembered, when this game was first launched and the reception gamers had. The people raised legitimate concerns, things that hurt the game once it launched. And people, the trolls aside, people were legitimately explaining why they felt the game was different and lacked the spirit of the IP. And the social media accounts, they doubled down. They ignored them. They downgraded their opinion, and they were committed to the route they were going to. People warned them, and this still happened. So I just want to point that out. Sometimes, a studio closes down, they make a bad game or whatever, but these guys were warned, and they should have delayed their game and reworked the writing at the very least, something, but they definitely had a heads up.
I want to follow up on that point, actually, because a perfect example of something I've seen, and it's one of the few games I've really seen this with, is with Baldur's Gate 3. That game was in early access for 3 freaking years, and they only had access to Act 1, so it wasn't like they got the full game early access or anything, but and that was 3 years of the gaming community play testing a game. Now, I'm not saying that that's something that every game needs to do. Once again, I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Baldur's Gate's the new bar everyone needs to meet." I'm not going that far, but I think the fact that at least like what you said with Saints Row is like, the community gave them preemptive warning saying, this isn't something that we're really looking forward to or something we're going to like. Maybe some changes are needed. And I know, once again, creating games, you can't really do that with every single title because, if what you're showing to the community is, after 5 years of development, it's kind of hard to backpedal and change a lot of things because most of the stuff's already done and you're showing them, their alpha content or whatever. But I do feel like more games would benefit from having those, early, like a larger pool of early testers. Because, I mean, how long ago was Starfield available for pre-order? Give or take. A year, 2 years, a year and a half?
Good question.
Say again. What's the question?
How long ago was Starfield available for pre-order?
It wasn't before January of this year.
Yeah, it was this year.
I think it was
so it was
June.
this year. So
I think it was June, yeah.
like, so I'm not saying that Starfield should do this, but as an example, so, you pre-order the game, which means you've already put money to the game. You practically own the game. Why don't more companies, say, here's a slice of the game, your betas and alphas, but something more long term, because I'm seeing a lot of these games that aren't coming out with betas and alphas, and I know most of the time those are for single player games. The multiplayer games very much do betas and alphas, but they also come out more polished. Like freaking Halo Infinite had a beta, and Halo 5 did too. And the gunplay in those games is great. People don't complain about the gunplay in those games because the players played them. They put in their feedback. There's not an issue. But, I feel like that if more games would have a longer time period of, hey, let's get the players to help us make the game that they want to play, we would get more, Baldur's Gate 3 scenarios, because that is 3 years of the players helping the company play test the game that they want to play. And I don't know how big that pool was. I don't know how many people played early access, especially for all 3 years. But now the game comes out, a bunch of people who never played the early access can play it now, and it's getting praise and huzzas and gold stars for everyone. And on the other side, everyone, all the haters are complaining because it's successful, because that's what haters do. I think a lot more game developers would benefit from having that pool of players to, help them. And then we wouldn't have situations like this. We wouldn't have our, Saints Row. I don't know how you could salvage Gollum, but that's beside the point. But, it give more games a longer span of alpha and beta. I know people want to have the surprise and secrecy if it was it's a single player game, but that doesn't mean like that it can't happen. I mean, actually Final Fantasy 15 and 16 had like the early access demo, which gave them a clip of the story before the main story, usually of the main characters when they're younger or something that happened before the main story happens. And people play it, and it gives them the base sense of how the combat works, the gist of the story, and the graphics and all that stuff. And then all those people play, they give their feedback, and that will help them tweak it right before the main release, half a year or so ahead, or maybe, even if it's just like 3 months or so. But then it helps polish the game, and that's more input from us rather than, hey, we've been working on this game for 10 years now. No one knows anything about it. And now we're going to throw it at you with very little play testing. You guys hop in, and you guys just do nothing, complain about it, because we never really got, a taste of polish. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I feel like, and I know it's asking a lot, and I know it's falling on deaf ears, but I think that's I think that would create a big change. I think that having more player involvement, because if you're making a game and you want people to buy it, having the people who are buying it help you, make it what you want or make it what they want. I feel like I'm just coming here from a business major, I just, it makes sense to me. And if they're pre-ordering the game, 2 years ahead or a year ahead, they already spent the money to buy it. So they're not going to, if they say, hey, play it a little bit and we'll make it better than when you played it this little alpha section, they're going to keep their pre-orders. People aren't going to, cancel their pre-orders. People cancel their pre-orders when they see the IGN early, or the streamer early copies go out and they're like, wow, this game is dog water. And all that.
Yeah.
That's when people quit. Not people don't quit, cancel pre-order. I mean, when, alphas and betas come out for, shooting games.
I remember the early gameplay. Like I'm talking about, like again, the streamers and whatnot, and it was just getting roasted because again, things were looking very sloppy and a lot of bugs. Like that game, there were so many patches after release, so many. Like, I remember it being like it should not have released when it did. That did not help it one bit. So, again, like, just a sign of the times. Unfortunately, some games get like shipped out way too early, way too early. Shockley, buddy, I know that you've been holding on silently. Like, what are your thoughts on again, Volition being shut down? I can't remember. Were you like a Saints Row fan or any fan of Volition's games at all?
Not really. Like I did buy the first Saints Row on the 360 because that at that time there hadn't been a next gen GTA yet. That was the closest thing to it. So I played the shit out of that one to definitely completions of the story and everything. It was cool seeing those. One thing I remember from it was the food mascots. There'd be people like dressed up as hot dogs or cups. So every time I see one, I just
the Professor Genki games.
Yeah. But yeah, that one had a cool story and character. So I was surprised that turned out to be as good as it was. I don't think I ever picked up the others. I think I watched some of my friends play like I forget which one. It was either the third or the fourth where it got crazy. I think it was still the third. It was crazy enough, but I was just like, where did we go from Saints Row 1 to what's going on in like the third, which was kind of nuts. So
it was very crazy, yes.
Yeah, like the first one.
And then in 4 we had aliens.
Yeah, that's where you lost me. That's just like too much. I like the feel of the first one and just like that story and that whole thing was pretty cool. But I'm not sure if the second one was just similar to that. But then when I saw what they were doing with the third and fourth, I was like, nope, this isn't for me anymore. So
I was a big fan of Keith David playing as Keith David, the vice president. that was a good gimmick in the fourth one.
Yeah, wasn't he in the first one?
He was
like the head.
He was Julian, I think was his name.
Oh, okay.
But then he literally played himself in the fourth one.
Oh.
He played Keith David as Keith David, the vice president.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that they're getting shut down. I think that's the danger. I mean, sure, that's the danger with any like consolidation of like, hey, if it's too much, then they might whoever buys them up might take in too much, and then they'll have to like downsize it or just like, hey, we got to cut costs. But I think it's a little bit different when I'm not too worried about it if like PlayStation bought up somebody like bought them up or something like that, because you have a lot more funding or ways to kind of get that revenue back, where you're not. Whereas I'm sure, yeah, Embracer Group's still a big company, so they kind of have that same, but they don't have their own like storefront, so they don't have their own like you have with Starfield buying Microsoft buying up Bethesda. They can use that to their advantage to boost their own subscription thing. I mean, Embracer could kind of do something like that, but still they wouldn't have the same degree to do it with having your own console storefront or having just that branding. Even though Xbox might not be on the level of PlayStation or Nintendo to have like, you know, that console branding or loyalty with their fans, they still have been in the game long enough that they've built up a following and a fan base where they can kind of expect a certain floor of like support of people either in their store, buying other content in their store. Whereas I think people just kind of compare it to like every time there's like a blow up with kind of what's going on in the movie industry of like, hey, look, see, streaming thing, the Netflix is the, you know, the devil, and it's look what it's doing. So that's what Game Pass is, and it's not 1-to-1 because Netflix doesn't sell. If they do sell anything, or they don't really have a storefront, they might sell their movies or shows eventually when they come out, and I think some of them on disc. But that's like well after the fact if they do offer it. Same thing with like HBO or whatever. But they don't have their own storefront where you're buying other content in their store, kind of like an Apple. Like Apple TV kind of has that both. So that's kind of closer to what Game Pass is, where hey, they have their own subscription model, but they also have their own storefront. So they're getting you into their store by, you know, subscribing to Apple TV, and then maybe you'll buy other digital content there. So it sucks that, you know, that it's going down this road, but I think when you get also other players that aren't big, that don't really have they have an interest in like making sure their investments succeed and everything, but I think they're more so in it. A company like Embracer or something like that is more in it for their own, just purely like financial gain, and they could care less. Hey, maybe down the road we'll just move away from this, or okay, we'll invest in something else. Whereas, sure, Microsoft could do something like that, or same with PlayStation, but or Sony. But they've kind of built up the loyalty over the being able to trust like their branding, like they've stayed, you know, around. They actually nurtured, and all of them, you know, as much as people want to hate on either PlayStation or Xbox or whatever, they've all done their, you know, good things that have come from them for gaming. Like, you know, just Xbox alone with the whole online age, and had we not had the 360 existed and it was only a Wii and PS3, who knows how, you know, our online could be way shittier than it was, and who knows if it would be where it is today. So at least on console. So you don't have that from Embracer. They haven't done anything of like over decades that have improved gaming. So they could probably, you know, give two shits if, hey, we did invest, or we did buy this, or bought a majority, you know, stock into this company, or we bought them outright, and then now we're just going to close it down. So whereas, you know, I think of PlayStation, even though Sony and Microsoft have shut down studios before at a certain point, you know, I think they're a little bit more careful about it than like a company like Embracer or somebody that's kind of like an outside, you know, outside player in a sense. But yeah, that's fortunately consolidations is inevitable, and so is shutting down studios eventually. And hopefully they just, you know, build up that same talent is able to get picked up and just either form their own place or go to other places and still be able to share that talent. So we don't lose them, but we may have just lost that company. Maybe another one will spawn up. So, but it's inevitable. So it is what it is. But yeah, it sucks when it happens.
All right. Fair comment, Shockley. Now, Crusader, I mean, I don't know, like, what your history is with Volition. Obviously, you've played, a little bit of Saints Row back in the day, as you were telling with a story. But again, what are your thoughts on this whole, again, Volition shutting down, by Embracer Group? Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I don't. So, I mean, Embracer Group makes me nervous in general, just because of how much they own and their actual overall company structure and like how they were planning to exist. It seems very shoddy at best. But I also can't look at Volition and be like, yeah, Embracer Group bad for shutting them down, when like they weren't owned by Embracer when their last game, Agents of Mayhem, absolutely failed.
Yeah.
And any focus testing for the Saints Row reboot should have told them that this is an awful direction to take the franchise in. Right? If they had done actual proper focus testing to figure out what the fans of the franchise would have wanted, as well as people who maybe aren't fans of the franchise that they want to get in. Because you always have to try and get new people to play, not just people who enjoy what was there. But focus groups should have absolutely told them that the game was terrible. There was so many just like from what I understand, the gameplay isn't too bad in it, but like the story and the characters are insufferable. And some of the best parts of Saints Row were the characters, like Johnny Gat, right?
Like, they were over the top, but like
Yeah.
they weren't like super cringe, right?
Yeah, Johnny
They were
Gat.
likable.
Oleg. I loved Oleg. And yeah, it was over the top, and you liked them. It almost has a Mass Effect Andromeda problem, where I like Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't like it as much as the other games, but like I don't hate it like other people do. But one of the biggest failings of Mass Effect Andromeda is that its characters weren't likable like the original franchise were. Most of them were insufferable. Vetra Nyx was fun, the female Turian character, and Drax, the old man Krogan, were awesome. But like, you had characters like PB and stuff that were terrible. And I can't speak to specific characters in the new Saints Row because I haven't played it. I don't really want to play it. Maybe someday I will if I get it for. I mean, I guess I have it on PS. I got it on PS Plus right now because that was one of the games that they put out this month. Though I'd rather, if I'm going to play it, I'd rather just get the achievements on Xbox. So I'll probably wait for it to be like $5 on the Xbox store and just get it again. But like, everything I saw about the game just felt and looked and seemed insufferable, right? Except for the gameplay looked fine. It didn't look great, didn't look stellar, but it looked fine. It looked okay. Saints Row never had stellar gameplay. It had fun, like GTA knockoff style gameplay, and it was good. I very much love Saints Row the Third. It's one of my favorite games ever. It's not a standout in its gameplay mechanics, but like it does what it does in the way it needs to do it, so that you're having a fun, weird, arcadey time. And nothing about the new reboot screamed that this was going to be anything like that. And I don't blame Embracer for a studio closure of a studio that hasn't had a successful release since Saints Row the 4th, and hasn't had an acclaimed one since Saints Row 3, right? Or what was Saints Row 4 called? Was it just called Saints Row 4? So Saints Row the 3rd, was it Saints Row the 4th, or was it? I don't know.
I actually can't remember. To be honest, I can't even remember.
Just Saints Row 4.
It was just 4. Okay,
I think so.
And to
'Cause
be
the
honest, I
third one was
can't even
great.
remember how successful it was. I know the third was very successful.
Yeah,
4, I can't remember
the 4
exactly.
did fine. It was a game that really probably shouldn't have been a full game. It was originally supposed to be a DLC for 3 that
Yeah.
turned into a standalone title that eventually had a DLC that was titled of the same DLC that was supposed to be the DLC for 3, which was Enter the Dominatrix.
Yeah, I remember.
And like I really loved 3. I just I'm sad that the studio is gone, but most studios are, unless they have someone who's like Hideo Kojima or Todd Howard or back in the day at BioWare, Casey Hudson, or upon Josh Sawyer at Obsidian is one. What's his name? Ukar. Who's the head of like the head of Arcane Leon? Who unless these people who are in like the visual heads of the studios that right? Unless you have something like that at a studio and they are there for life, like Todd Howard is, and Hideo Kojima will be at Kojima Studios, his studios named after him, right? He'll be at those studios for life. The studios really aren't the same studios game to game, especially not after a couple. Yeah, Brian Fargo is another great example at An Exile. That's a Thimber. Great call out there. Like the Volition of today is not the Volition that created Saints Row 3. Some of the people are there, but they bled a lot, and you can tell it doesn't feel like the same game that they made. And like the best parts of Grand Theft Auto and Saints Row were the fact that they, in some ways, were a satire on. They didn't try to be conforming. They tried to be a satire on what's awful, and that's how they kind of conformed to modern times, right? They made things so outrageous that it made fun of the things that were in focus, right? Like Trevor in GTA 5 is supposed to be an extreme example of like a blue collar like redneck criminal, right? But he's an extreme example of that acts almost almost as a satire, satirically to what's making fun of. GTA has always done that exceptionally, where like things are very, very satirical to what they're trying to describe. And Saints Row did that really well too. But in this new one, they tried to truly conform, and that made it bad. It was no longer the super like flamboyant and obnoxious, and it became obnoxious instead of making fun of obnoxious. Does that make sense? Instead of poking fun and being likable because it's poking direct fun at the modern times, it tried to be the modern times.
But yeah, I was kind of concerned because they're like, yeah, we're changing the name of the car place, the custom car place, like Rim Jobs to like, what was it, Jim Robs or something?
Yeah.
And it was just like, guys, like I sort of understand what you're doing, but it doesn't feel the same.
Like that's how safe they had to play it. They couldn't even say that.
It's like it's like if they tried to change the name of Burger Shot or Cluck and Bell in GTA. Cluck and Bell is supposed to both be making fun of KFC, but it's also supposed to be like similar to fucking hell.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and like in GTA, like all of the in San Andreas, literally everything that has a number to it is 69. Everything. Right? To the point where it's obnoxious, but it's something you expect from GTA, right? But they're being raunchy on purpose. Like it's instead of Area 51, it's Area 69. Instead of Hangar 18, it's Hangar 69, right? Like that's how they work. And it's just so frustrating to see some of a lot of developers and creative leads not understand why people like things and and use that as the base of how they are going to make the thing their own, instead of trying to make it completely their own. So many games suffer from that so often. The Halo show suffered from that kind of concept. Most adaptations of games, books, or things into film or movies suffer from that greatly. The Resident Evil show is actually a worse example of that. The Resident Evil show is bad. At least the Halo show is. If you can, for like 10 seconds, take the whole concept of Halo out of your head, the fact that you know what the Halo story is, the Halo show is not terrible.
It's a sci-fi show,
It's a
and it
sci-fi show.
passes.
It's okay, and it passes, and it's enjoyable once you take the fact that it's the Halo IP out of
That's
your
debatable, but go on.
head. The Resident Evil show was just bad because, and that's the problem with the original Witcher seasons. The first two were good because it was they were being very true to the source material, because people
That's
like
not
The Witcher
true.
for why they like The Witcher, right? And the newest season is bad. You know why? They decided to stray from why people freaking like The Witcher, right? And so I can't be. I'm not shocked. I'm sad people lost their jobs. I'm always going to be sad that people lost their jobs. I hope that the developers get picked up by studios where they can do things that they want to do and have an audience that will, find them well. But I can't be shocked that a studio that's had two massive creative failures in a row are closed. Like, even if they had been independent, I would have expected at least massive restructuring and firings. Like, we saw that at 343, right? That
Yeah.
the entire leadership was gutted and replaced at 343, right?
Pretty
Like,
much.
Some of them left on their own volition to do their own things. Like, I don't, I highly doubt, what's his name? The one who left for Netflix.
Joe Staten.
Yeah, Joe Staten. I don't think he, was forced out or left because of the restructuring, but like, Kiki Wolfkill was definitely kind of.
Yeah.
And they put people who understand stuff in place, and maybe closing Volition is too strong of a move, right? But people are like, they could have learned from their mistakes. I'm like, they didn't learn after, this is the second failure in a row, right? The saying is, something once, shame on you, something twice, shame on me. You know what I mean? And it's shame on, essentially them as a studio. They failed to capture an audience twice in a row with huge budget games. And of course, something financial is going to happen to them. Like, I'm shocked that my favorite studio, BioWare, is still open after Andromeda and Anthem. I really hope that Dreadwolf is good, because if Dreadwolf isn't, I fear for if the next Mass Effect will release, right? But like, logically, if you're failing to capture your audience multiple times in a row, that keeping you as a viable organization becomes impossible, because you just keep sinking money in and you're not getting a return. Sucks that that's the kind of world we live in, but that's the world we live in. Like, so, I'm sad, and like, again, if it had been a studio that had been an average, or had been releasing average content or even good content that Embracer closed, I'd be like, yeah, this is on Embracer. But like, again, if they had to close the studio, I don't like an EA or an Activision or even a popular, like, name a studio that's beloved by people, would even be questioning whether they'd that this would still be able to remain open. If they were independent, they would certainly have closed, right? If they were totally independent, they would not. Publishers wouldn't touch them, and they wouldn't be financially viable.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, that's right.
I don't. And it's fine to be sad about it, but like it's not shocking, and I don't think there should be. The only thing that was disgusting, and this was actually disgusting, was that they announced that studio closure like 20 minutes after the Starfield embargo launched to try and hide it. That's actively disgusting. They launched it in the middle of the embargo launching to try and on a Friday afternoon to try and hide the news. That's disgusting.
Yeah, that was
It is
pretty bad.
That if we're gonna call out Embracer Group for something, that is what people should be calling them out for. And yeah, BioWare did have restructuring. People are right. They let go of people, and they let go of some shocking people. Like BioWare let go of one of the people who's been like writing for Dragon Age since the first one, which is alarming to me. That's a totally different conversation.
Mm-hmm. But no, I understand, and I don't know, I guess just kind of round out things, though. I mean, again, we hate reporting on studios getting shut down and people, obviously losing jobs. But at the same time, I guess there's, a reason why, again, the things, things had taken the turn that they did, right? Obviously, if you look at, again, the games and whatnot that were produced, you kind of understand the outcome, unfortunately. But again, I hope those individuals are all right and move on to other things, and maybe with different creative oversight and so on, they can move on to bigger and better things, hopefully. That being said, guys, any other comments regarding Volition? Yes, no? All right. Okay, guys, I guess, that wraps things up for tonight's offerings. Fun chat, really, and great discussion surrounding Starfield's launch and Volition Studios shutting down. Thanks to everybody that stopped by tonight. I hope you all enjoyed our fun little chat. Please consider dropping a like, sharing out tonight's episode, and if you're new here, hey, please sub to the channel. I would love to have you stick around. Dots, buddy, thanks for stopping by tonight. It's always a privilege having you here. Where can everybody follow you at?
Yeah, no, always thanks for having me. But wait. I thought we had a third topic we still had to talk about.
No.
Didn't we talk about that earlier?
Oh yeah.
We'll get you in that cosplay one day, Crusader.
Garrus.
No, everyone can find me on Dots RTS on the big black X and Twitter. We're still calling it Twitter. Yeah, Dotsaurus and Cast Dotsaurus and everything else. Yeah, always happy to be here with you guys. Always fun.
Agreed. Love the chat. And again, thanks for coming on, buddy. Moving on to the TXR regulars. Moving on to Eric Shockley, buddy. Hey, great insight. I know it's been busy for you for many different reasons. Same here, by the way. But yeah, I thought you had some really great commentary. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, as always, you can find me at ShockNeuro on Twitter, EZShock on Xbox Live. But yeah, good show tonight. Cool topics, and I'm definitely up Starfield, starting to create my character, so definitely starting to get into it, and hopefully have some hours into it for sure over this coming week. So, but yeah, good night.
All right, I'm looking forward to hearing your comments next week. Then that'd be cool. All right, who else do we got here? The GeneralMLD. But hey, again, I really liked your input tonight, and I'm happy that you've been enjoying Starfield. Where can all these fine people follow you?
Oh yeah, great chat. You guys can find me at MLD Ghost on Twitter, gamertag GhostMLD, and yeah, I'll be here playing more Starfield. I can't get enough of it.
Good stuff. Good luck on the Game Plus then. And finally, Crusader, Bud, Pal, Budster, Mr. Garrus. Where can everybody follow you at?
You can find me at Crusader3456 on most gaming platforms, and on Twitter I refuse to call it the other name. Elon Musk can find me and make me stop himself. I refuse.
Sure.
It's terrible.
Oh, you. And yeah, guys, just to round out the crew, of course, you can find my content on YouTube at Invader Gaming. I will be having some new content pop up as I do have a new PC, and yeah, I do have some things planned in the works. I did record something the other day, so I should have it up within the next couple of days. But yeah, again, fun chat tonight, and yeah, as usual, I'm looking forward to the next one, as I'm sure everybody else is, and yeah, we'll see you next weekend. Later, guys. Have a good one.